Good evening. Welcome to World Now at 4. I am Peace Ogenegbawe. First, let's talk the headlines. And on the headlines, Vice President Osinbajo arrives in Ebonyi State for working visit. AU launches AU COVID-19 vaccination. On the international scene, 39 deadly explosion at Ukraine railway station. On sport, Leclerc beats Verstappen in practice, I beg your pardon, as Mercedes struggles. Now the news in detail. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has arrived Ebonyi State today for a working visit. The Nigeria's Vice President on Friday arrived Ebonyi State for one-day working visit to the state. According to reports, the Vice President arrived the state aboard a helicopter at the Ebonyi International Airport, still under construction at Onweke in Eza North local government area of the state. The Vice President was received by the Governor of the state, David Umahi, and other high-profile members and government officials at the All Progressives Congress chieftains in the state. Osinbajo addressed the closing session of the 21st Joint Planning Board, that is the JPB, and National Council on Development Planning and NCDP, holding in Abakaliki, Ebonyi State Capital. The meeting was organized by the Federal Ministry of Finance and Budget and National Planning in the state. Osinbajo was also inaugurated some projects executed by Umahi administration across the state. Nigeria abstained from voting in the suspension of Russia from the Human Rights Council in the UN General Assembly. According to reports, a total of 93 member nations voted in favor of the suspension in the Eastern Bloc, which has continued its invasion of Ukraine for nearly 2 months. 24 other countries, however, voted against it. Despite this, the resolution had two-thirds majority of those voting, excluding members abstaining to vote in the 193-member assembly. Before the commencement of voting, Ukrainian Ambassador Sergei Kislystya urged countries to support the resolution. Kislystya told the assembly that Bucha and dozens of other Ukrainian cities and villages where thousands of peaceful residents have been killed and tortured, raped, abducted, and robbed by the Russian army serve as an example of how dramatically far the Russian Federation had gone from its initial declaration in the human rights domain. Besides Nigeria, 21 other African countries also abstained from voting process, including Angola, Botswana, Cabo Verde, Cameroon, and Egypt. Others were Eswatini, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar, Mozambique, Namibia, Niger, Senegal, South Africa, South Sudan, Sudan, Togo, and Uganda. On the other hand, the likes of Algeria, Burundi, Central African Republic, Congo, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gabon, Mali, and Zimbabwe voted against the suspension. National Secretary of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, that is APGA, Labaran Maku, has defected to the People's Democratic Party, that is PDP. Maku, a former Minister of Information under former President Goodluck Jonathan, confirmed this to newsmen in Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital. He said his decision to return to PDP was in response to the yearnings of his people in Nasarawa state. According to reports, Maku had defected from PDP to APGA in 2015 after his unsuccessful attempt to clinch the PDP governorship ticket. The former minister contested for Nasarawa state governorship positions in 2015 and 2019 on the APGA ticket. You're watching World Now at 4 on Hills TV. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching World Now at 4 on Hills TV. African Union, which is the AU Commission, has disclosed the launch of the AU COVID-19 vaccination Bingwa initiative. In his address after the launch, Chairman, AU Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, called on youth to lead the charge and support in increasing vaccine uptake with scale, speed, across Africa. In the meantime, Malagasy's Defense Minister Leon Richard Rakotonirina has revealed that a military cooperation deal arrangement between Madagascar and Russia signed in January is nothing out of the ordinary. He said this in response to questions about the deal during the meeting with the Chinese defense attaché and the Indian ambassador. Earlier, news reports had it that it was a 5-year agreement with the possibility of extension on military and technical cooperation, which includes arms supplies, training of military personnel, and maintenance of equipment. We move to other parts of the world after this break. Just stay with us. Welcome back. A missile that exploded near the Ukrainian railway station, which officials claim killed at least 39 people, had the words "for" and "children" painted on it in Russia. Up to 4,000 people, believed to be largely women and children, were at Kramatorsk station on Friday morning when the blast occurred. The grammar of the words emblazoned on the side of the mangled missile means the translation from the Russian is "for what has been done to the children." The rail station had been packed in recent days as thousands of people sought to flee eastern Ukraine amid fears of Russian offensive. The Russian Defense Ministry had denied targeting the station, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Kremlin forces of cynically destroying the civilian population. Still on Russia-Ukraine invasion, Mariupol has been on the Russian stage for 5 weeks, but many residents have managed to flee to other towns in Ukraine. Reports has it that people arriving in the city of Zaporizhzhia, which is acting as a hub for refugees, describe a merciless assault on Mariupol in which airstrikes and shellings have flattened entire districts. Many who managed to flee from Mariupol found themselves at aid stations in Zaporizhzhia, and the chances of getting out are diminished quickly for many residents. Reports also gathered says that Chechen militants loyal to Moscow have been fighting in Ukraine since the start of the invasion, and they are reported to have heavily involved in the siege of Mariupol. And now to Israel, where the Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, says security forces will have full freedom to act after 2 Israelis were shot dead in the attack at Tel Aviv. 2 men were killed and 12 others wounded when a Palestinian opened fire on a bar in one of the city's busiest streets on Thursday night. The attacker invaded a huge manhunt for hours before being shot dead in a gunfight in nearby Jafar. In the latest, Rahad Hazim, 28 years, from Jenin, is in the occupied West Bank, shot people at the Ilkar bar on Zinzengov Street, a main thoroughfare full of restaurants and bars in the heart of Tel Aviv, before escaping. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 members of the Israeli police, Army Special Forces, and the Shin Bet intelligence services poured into the city center to try to find him, as police warned residents to stay indoors. Hazim was found hiding near a mosque in the port of Jaffa, about 4 miles away, and was killed in a shootout with counter-terrorism and security agents. You're still watching World Now at 4. Up next is Business News. Welcome back. Now to business news. African Development Bank, that is AFDB, has secured investment funding to finance infrastructure projects, development of resilient agricultural systems, and strengthening of the continent's manufacturing capacity in the health sector. According to the bank's president, Akinwumi Adesina, progress reports on projects to nurture resilience in agriculture, mitigate impact of conflicts across the continent, and the post-pandemic recovery effort is still in place. Having drawn lessons from the devastating COVID-19 pandemic, the bank is determined to nurture the capacity of African economies to survive and thrive through similar crises that may strike in the future. The world's largest coal importer, Japan, says plans are underway to reduce Russian coal imports while looking for alternative suppliers in the wake of sanctions against Moscow. The industry minister said this on Friday that the move also highlights a potential shift in Japan's energy procurement policy. The minister, Koichi Haguda, told reporters that Japan will aim over time to end coal imports from Russia, the country's second biggest supplier of thermal coal, in 2021. Russia accounted for 11% of Japan's total coal imports, according to the government's data, and Russia was Japan's 5th biggest supplier of crude and liquefied natural gas, that is LNG, in 2021. Japan will coordinate its move with the United States and European countries after the group of 7, that's the G7 allies, issued a statement pledging additional sanctions on Russia in response to its alleged mass killings of civilians in Ukraine. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said on Thursday that Japan will unveil further sanctions against Russia for its invasion on Ukraine as early as Friday after coordinating the G7 allies on further punitive steps. Still on business news, world food commodity prices had made significant leap in March to reach their highest levels so far, as war in the Black Sea region spread shocks through markets to staple grains and vegetable oils. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, that is FOA, in a report on Friday on the FOA food price and index averaged 159.3 points in March, up to 12.6% from February, when it had already reached its highest level since inception in 1990. Index tracks monthly changes in the international prices of a basket of commonly traded food commodities, says the latest level of the index was 33.6% higher than in March 2021. Russia and Ukraine combined accounted for around 30% and 20% of global wheat and maize exports, respectively, over the past 3 years. World wheat prices soared by 19.7% during the month, exacerbated by concerns over crop conditions in the United States. We now join Richard Badung for sports news on World Now at 4. Do stay with us.
Good evening and welcome to Sports News on World Now at 4. I'm Richard Badung. Black Stars interim coach Otto Addo is confident the Black Stars of Ghana will make a good impact at the 2022 FIFA World Cup to come up in Qatar later this year. The West Africans will face Portugal, Uruguay and South Korea in the Group H encounter of the Global Showpiece event come November. The Black Stars had a poor outing at the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon early this year and managed to beat eternal rivals Nigeria to seal a spot via away goal rule to qualify for the Mundial proper in Qatar. Addo is confident with adequate preparations his side will do well in Qatar. Addo's side will open their tournament at the 2022 World Cup by taking on Portugal before playing Suarez, Uruguay, and then wrap up their game against South Korea in the final match clash in the group stage. France was crowned men's Six Nations champion after beating England in March, and the two sides are on a collision course for the title in the women's tournaments. Reports showed that the Champions Cup last 16 first legs will take place over this weekend, with the return legs scheduled for 15 to 17 April. The four highest ranked clubs in each pool, Racing, Ulster, La Rochelle, Leinster, Leicester, Harlequins, Munster and Bristol will have home advantage in the second leg matches. It is the first time that a two-leg format has been deployed in the last 16, with contests decided by aggregate scores. If teams are level on points at the end of the second leg, extra time will be considered. If the team still cannot split on the scoreboard, then the number of tries scored in the contest and finally a place kick competition will be the tiebreaker The English champions take on French top 14 leaders in a mouth-watering tie, and the restrictions on travel from England to France eased Queens across the channel with a healthy backing. British Cycling suspended its transgender and non-binary participation policy with immediate effect on Friday, denying transgender the chance to compete in domestic women's races until the policy was reviewed. British Cycling said it had taken the decision to suspend the policy due to differences between its own policy and that of the world governing body, that is UCI. The move comes after transgender cyclist Emily Bridges was told by British Cycling that she was ineligible to compete in the women's race at the National Omnium Championships. Bridges had been due to compete in her first women's event in debut, but British Cycling said it had been informed by the UCI that she would not be eligible to participate under their current guidelines. Still on sports, Charles Leclerc headed Red Bull's Max Verstappen in Friday practice at the Australian Grand Prix. According to reports, Leclerc ended the season with 0.245 seconds ahead of the Dutchman, who appeared to have the potential to go faster had it not been for traffic and some errors. The second Ferrari of Carlos Sainz was 0.398 seconds off the pace in third place, ahead of the Fernando Alonso's Alpine, impressively competitive in fourth. Mercedes drivers George Russell and Lewis Hamilton were only 11th and 13th. The seven-time champion said it had been a difficult season, as Mercedes lowered the ride height of their car to try to gain performance, but this led to further problems with proposing, which is a high-frequency bouncing on the straights as the airflow under the car is disrupted, and which has afflicted the Mercedes since its first track hit the track. And that's your sports news on World Now at 4. Back to Peace for the rest of the news. I'm Richard Badung.
Thank you so much, Richard, for that sports stories. The remains of the late veteran Nollywood actor Larry Williams will be buried April 14 in his hometown, Yalankom, in Ikom local government area of Cross River State. The first son of the deceased, Femi Williams, disclosed this to newsmen. According to him, a series of songs would be organized for the deceased on April 11 in Lagos and another on April 13 in his hometown before he would be laid to rest on April 14. Early reports show that Williams died on February 27, 2022 in his hometown after a brief illness at the age of 81. Femi Williams said that the family decided to begin the celebration from Lagos, where his father spent most of his life. And that's World Now at 4, but before we go, a quick look at the headlines again. We told you that the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, arrived in Ebonyi State on a one-day working visit. We told you that the African Union Commission has launched an AU COVID-19 vaccination. On the international scene, we said the 39th deadly explosion at Ukraine railway station has claimed the life of people. And on sport, Leclerc has beaten Verstappen in practice as Mercedes struggles continues. Remember to visit us on Hills TV on our Facebook, Instagram at Hills TV, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Hills TV. I am Peace Ogenegbawe. Thank you for watching.